One of the smartest things I ever did was become a yoga instructor at 41 years of age. Why do you ask? Well, I had arrived at a place in my life where I needed something more than just pumping iron, lifting weights, squatting 300 pounds for reps, all of which I enjoyed in my youth, but let's just say that my joints and ligaments weren't having it anymore. I always looked at yoga as just another form of exercise. I was never intimidated by it. But the first time I got on my yoga mat, something special truly happened. It was the first form of exercise that I had ever experienced where I felt exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. Right then and there, I knew I was hooked. And I decided to take the plunge at 41 years of age and become a certified yoga instructor. Little did I know that during yoga teacher training, I would have to revisit some old emotional wounds from my childhood. But I needed to do that in order to finally break through into the person that I am today. But before breaking through, I literally had to break down. Let's fast forward to the fall 2014. I'm in yoga teacher training, meeting other yoga teacher trainees, people who are on their own individual yoga journeys, and we're getting along, we're bonding, everyone's having a wonderful time. It's a great atmosphere. Everyone is supporting each other, encouraging each other to break through, to lay down old wounds and to lay down old scars and to help them heal. Well, for me, that was easier said than done. But something inside of me told me, Dutch, you need to do this. If you're going to be the husband and father to your son that you hope to be, you're going to have to open that door and let those demons out. What do I mean by that? Well, this is what I mean. It happened around winter time, 2014, 2015. A group of us yoga instructors, trainees, and people who attended this yoga studio were going through a 40 days for personal revolution type of training, where everybody is opening up about how their yoga practice is helping them break through, break down, break through again. Something inside of me just kept churning and churning and churning. I knew what it was, but I didn't want to say anything. It had brought me so much pain, this thing inside of me that had been building up for over 40 years, but I had to let it go. It didn't matter that I was in a room full of strangers who were slowly but surely becoming friends. It didn't matter that in letting out this demon, I would be airing a family secret that my entire family tried to keep from me. And that when I finally found out what it was, it shook me to the core. And to this day, I'm still not cool with certain members of my family as a result of it. But it just kept knocking on that door. You gotta let me out sooner or later, bro. You gotta let me out. So I sat there. When it was time to volunteer and express ourselves, as much as I wanted to keep my mouth shut, and that's very hard for me to do, my hand just went up, boom. And I said, okay, this is the moment of truth. So I stood up there in a room full of 60 fellow yogis and yoginis, one of the only few men and the only African-American man in that room. And I released that demon. And that demon is, I'm the product of my mother's extramarital affair. Whew! Yeah, I said it. As the youngest of 6 children growing up without a father, I always thought that the father who was the father of my older siblings, I thought he was my dad. That's what everyone told me. Yeah, my parents had divorced and we lived on food stamps while he went off and married someone else and he had his own life and we had to struggle and survive. That was the story of my friends. That was the story of everyone that I grew up with. That was my story. I said, okay, no big deal. Throughout my life, I buckled down. I focused on education. I focused on bettering myself intellectually, academically. I graduated from high school at the top of my class, went to college, became the first in my family to graduate from college, earn a master's degree, traveled the world as a U.S. diplomat, all that good stuff. All the while tucking away something that at the time I didn't know what it was. Something was gnawing at me. I get married myself. I married the most beautiful woman the Kingdom of Morocco ever created. We have a beautiful 6-year-old son. His name is Luther. You truly cannot understand what unconditional love is until you have a child. It is the greatest feeling in the world, especially for a man who grew up without a father. So one of the things that encouraged me to pursue yoga teacher training was to be a better role model for my son Luther, whom I love more than anything in the world. And that also pushed me to let out that demon. See, my mother died in 2000. And the man whom I thought was my father, Joe Martin, he passed away in 2005. So upon his passing, the family was screaming and hollering, bickering at each other about what to do about his inheritance, who would get what, so on and so forth, this, that, and the other, who would get their share, on and on and on. Then I heard something. I heard something from a member of my own family, one of my siblings. She didn't tell me herself, but another one of our siblings told me she said this, and that's what opened the floodgates. And it caused me to look at my dearly departed mother in a totally different way. It also caused me to look at my entire family a completely different way. And it wrecked me emotionally for many years. And it took that moment at that yoga studio for me to finally let that demon out and release it. Because I realize now, if I hadn't done so, I probably wouldn't be standing here today. While they were going over the process of settling my father's affairs, one of my sisters said the following. She didn't say it to me, but she said it to the rest of the family, and it got back to me. She said, well, Dutch shouldn't get anything of Joe's money. Dutch isn't even his son. Now, imagine being the first in your family to graduate from college, do the things that you've been doing up until that point, work for the federal government, basically make your mother proud, make your family proud, and then here's something like that. It's like a sledgehammer hitting you right in the chest. Come to find out that when my parents were married, my father slept around a lot. So my mother decided that the prudent thing to do would be to cheat on him. She gets pregnant with me. And this is a secret that my mother took to her grave. The identity of my own biological father, the man who helped sire me, is a secret that my mother took to her grave. I can't confront her about it. My older brothers and sisters don't know who he was. I'm basically left in the dark. Fast forward several years, January the 1st, 2011, my son Luther's born. I look at this beautiful child and I say to myself, I'm going to do everything in my power to be the father to you that I never had. And that led me to my yoga mat. I'm 40 years old, okay, 285 pounds, borderline diabetic, obese, out of shape, overweight. I started doing yoga, magic started to happen. Never mind the fact that I dropped 35 pounds, I reversed the diabetes that was just knocking at the door. I became healthier than I've ever been in my entire life, healthier now than I was in my 20s. But being on my yoga mat taught me something about the demons that we have inside of us. Those old scars, those old wounds, those family secrets that we're supposed to just keep inside of us no matter the havoc that they wreak upon us. And that is, number one, accept your story. We all have one. Every story is different. It doesn't make you any better or worse than anyone else. Two, own your story. One of the things that I've learned as a yoga practitioner and yoga instructor is that I am okay just as I am. I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I'm not trying to one up on anyone. This is my practice. This is my time for my own personal development, for my own self-improvement. And I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this for my son. I'm doing this for my wife so that I can be the husband that she needs me to be. I'm doing this for Luther so I can be the father that he can be proud of. And three, love your story. Pain and all, warts and all, because when you own your story, when you accept your story, when you love your story, you ultimately come to the process and ultimately come to the conclusion where you love yourself. And when you do those things, no one can take that away from you, and no one can use it against you. So I stand before you, 43 years old, a yoga practitioner, a yoga instructor, someone who has finally realized what's possible in his own life. And I got to that point because I finally had to allow myself to break down so that I could finally break through. And lastly, I'll leave you with this. One of my favorite quotes is given by the great Les Brown. He quotes Dr. Howard Thurman, who was an advisor to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi. Dr. Thurman wrote that the ideal situation for a man or woman to die is to be surrounded by his loved ones, praying for him as he crosses over. But imagine for a moment you're lying on your deathbed, and standing around your deathbed are the ghosts of the dreams, the ideas, the passions, the gifts, the talents that were given to you by life, but for whatever reason you did absolutely nothing with them. You never developed your talents or gifts. You never pursued your passions. You never went after your goals. And they're standing around you, staring at you with large, angry eyes, saying, "We came to you, and only you could have given us life. And now, we must die with you forever." It took me to hear that saying one time. And when I heard it, I pulled over my car because I was driving to work. I had to pull over because it caused tears to start streaming down my face. That was the impetus for me to not only become a yoga instructor, but to finally give myself permission to break down, to get rid of all of that emotional baggage so that I could finally break through and do what the universe has called me to do. And that is use my voice as a yoga instructor, speaker, and motivator to tell you all it's okay to break down. Your breakthrough is just around the corner. Namaste.